which typically these are items that have already been recommended unanimously by a committee of the City Council or being submitted in accordance with city procedure. Generally, it's no discussion of the items on this agenda unless a council member so requests, in which they will remove the item individually and will consider it. Items not removed will be enacted in one motion. Council members, are there any items on this consent agenda you'd like to have removed?
C4.
C4, council member.
I move for approval of the balance of the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by council member Clark. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. And I'm thinking Councilmember Joyner, you voted yes, I believe. Give me a thumbs up.
I did.
Okay, I got you now. All right. All right, we'll go to item C4.
Item C4, consideration of items related to the North Carolina Department of Transportation agreement for replacement of the old Greensboro Road Bridge over Brushy Fork Creek.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes, this is going to be a major improvement for that bridge. So I'd just like for you to let us know and the public know what is the timetable for this.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Scipio, and good afternoon, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of the committee and council. Good question. So this at a high level is just an agreement with NCDOT to fund the replacement of the Old Greensboro Road Bridge just east of 5th Street. And right now, this item really allows us to enter that agreement and to start the preliminary engineering work. And so that work will commence. Obviously, we have to get under contract for design services. That'll take some time. But right now, this project will be in design for the next about 18 months with a lot of make-ready work, and then it'll go into construction in 2027, 2028. There's one thing I wanted to make sure that we're having to coordinate closely that the committee is aware of, and I want to be clear because NCDOT has other bridge replacement projects on Old Greensboro Road out towards Linville Road. And so this project will have to be closely coordinated with those projects because it will affect traffic in the whole area. You think about schools at Atkins in the vicinity and things like that. So we'll be coordinating very closely with both projects. And so while we say 2027, 2028, it is really contingent on that coordination details as we work through those nuance with the North Carolina DOT. So happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you. That was my concern.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve C4.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hall. Any discussion? All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now go to the general agenda. And any items that are approved on this agenda today will go to the regular city council meeting for final approval on April the 7th at our 6 o'clock meeting. Item G1, please.
Item G1, update on Housing Authority of Winston-Salem.
I'd like to recognize the director of the Housing Authority, Mr. Kevin Cheshire. Like it might be good to get some facts on the table here regarding the Crystal Towers project, which we are all very familiar with, and I think there might have been a little bit of misinformation presented at some of the meetings, and let's just try to get the facts on the table here. So, Mr. Cheshire, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I'll try to walk through the presentation, and thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity. If you have questions, please feel free to stop me, and then, of course, I'm happy to receive questions or comments at the end of the presentation. The first slide just puts Crystal Towers in context. It is, of course, a downtown core location located on 6th Street. Construction was started in 1968 and concluded in 1972. We've got 201 units at Crystal Towers. They are all one bedroom. It is important to note that it is designated as independent living, meaning there are not in-house case management services associated with the housing, but the housing is designated for elderly and disabled. That means you either need to have a disability or to be 62 and older in order to qualify to live at Crystal Towers. This is what's called Section 9 housing. It's traditionally been known as public housing. That means that the Housing Authority owns, operates, and manages the housing. It's structured where residents pay 30% of their adjusted gross income, or for residents who report zero income from any source, earned, unearned, or donations, those residents pay $50 a month. Just to provide a little bit more context, our residents at Crystal Towers on average pay earn $11,000 a year adjusted gross income. Sorry, I may be pushing the wrong button. All right, there we go. Thank you. This is just a staff overview. I'm going to recognize two of my board members. Board Chair Andy Perkins is here, as well as our Finance Committee Chair Bill Rose. Just like to acknowledge them, thank them for being here. And then if I could have my staff come up, please. I think it's just important to recognize who's at Crystal Towers day in and day out. I know there have been a lot of comment with respect to the way that reports are handled, and I just want to let our staff know. This is Chris Allen, who runs our maintenance at Crystal Towers. This is Morticia T.T. Parman, who's responsible for resident engagement and outreach. And this is Tuesday Crawls, who manages the Crystal Towers building. So it's just important for me that our team hear how proud I am of the work that they do day in and day out, and I know that our board has repeated that. So it's important for me that the council see that the folks that are standing behind me are those who are responsible for waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and dealing with issues and getting out there every day, who have dedicated their lives to the provision and maintenance of affordable housing. So I thank you guys for being here.
So, Mr. Cheshire, who is the guy that just stepped up?
I don't know that guy, Mayor Pro Tem. So that's, and forgive me, that's Ted Ordovez. He snuck in on me there at the end. So Ted is our Executive Vice President of Operations. He's relatively new to town. He comes to us from the state of Colorado, where he's previously run 2 different housing authorities, one in Colorado and one in Louisiana. So ultimately, the day-to-day operations report up to Ted. So Ted, thank you as well for being here. One thing that maybe doesn't get a lot of attention about Crystal Towers, it's one of 16 of our multifamily communities. And you know, the other housing communities that maybe folks are not as familiar with, Camden Station, Oaks at 10th, Stony Glen, Townview, we're really proud of the new units that we've developed. These units provide a high standard of living. They're aesthetically pleasing. And while we recognize that they don't get as much attention, it's important to note that a lot of the housing provided by the authority has been recently rehabbed and modernized, and it's housing that all of us, I think, are or would be proud of if we were familiar with it. I want to sort of juxtapose the old model and the new model. I've selected a few of our communities that represent the new model. Brookside View, Camden Station, Brown School Lofts, and the Oaks at 10th. What these represent are townhome style or single-family detached structures that are mixed income. So we want these to reflect true community, and this is what we've been working to acquire, rehab, and develop recently. The contrast is the old model, right? That's Piedmont, Crystal, Sunrise, and Cleveland, the communities that almost everyone is familiar with that are 60 or 70 years old now. And we've inherited these from previous generations. We understand that. And the question is begged, well, what makes it an old model? Well, with respect to the family communities, Cleveland and Piedmont, there's a lack of defensible space, this barrack-style housing. There's concentrated poverty in contrast with the new model, which provides mixed income to more accurately reflect neighborhood and community conditions. We see unforeseen consequences of deinstitutionalization, and I'll come back and touch on that. This housing is disconnected from case management. It is siloed. We are a landlord only, providing just housing and no support of a wraparound services, which ties into the fact that we're housing centric. With respect to Crystal Towers specifically, as well as its sister building, Sunrise Towers, it is very elevator dependent. And Crystal Towers, there has been a loss of symbiosis as we have seen the disabling conditions that qualify individuals for housing trend away from physical disabling conditions more to emotional, mental, and behavioral health conditions. So some of the symbiosis that was previously present with respect to elderly and disabled is no longer as present. Let me touch on the deinstitutionalization and simply note that deinstitutionalization was a good thing, right? We don't want to warehouse folks that have needs, but the unforeseen consequence was that a lot of those folks ended up in public housing without any sort of supportive services connected to that, and the housing programs are just not structured to enable our staff to be trained, educated, funded to deal with those issues. I won't read through all of these quotes, but the takeaway here is that this is a national issue and not a new issue. understand when it's our issue, we feel like it's ours and ours alone, and it can feel isolating and it can feel overwhelming. The Undersecretary of HUD was here last year, and I invited him to tour Crystal Towers. I will read his quote, which is, he told us, "Yours is not a problem unique to Winston-Salem or even North Carolina." And I will follow up on something that he told me that I did not put in the presentation. I said, "Secretary Minacchio, can you give me one example of high-rise public housing across the country where it is working well?" And this gentleman last year was responsible for all public housing across the country. He struggled to give me one example across the country where this was working and working well. A quick Google search will show that these headlines that I've screen grabbed are just a drop in the bucket. They're everywhere, and everyone is dealing with this all across the country. This is a national issue. I included two examples not to suggest that this is what we should do, and not even to suggest that this has been effective, just to further illustrate that there are other cities that are trying to deal with this. Durham did it in the form of a housing bond where a significant portion was devoted to renovating high-rise public housing in downtown Durham core. Cincinnati, Ohio did it with a statewide program where some of the funding was directed to the Cincinnati Housing Authority, and then there were other financing mechanisms where the Housing Authority could borrow from that fund. New York City has a bill proposed to provide funding directly to the New York City Housing Authority. That bill has not been passed. Again, my point here is not that these are good solutions or that they will work here in Winston-Salem. My point is that everybody's trying to address this, and even a city as large as New York recognizes that not only can the New York City Housing Authority not address it, the city of New York cannot address it, and apparently they feel that the state of New York cannot address it because they went to the federal government for $40 billion just for public housing in the city of New York. Okay, so that sort of sets the table for what is our starting point. And I don't think anybody in this room is naive enough to think that we've got a good situation at Crystal Towers, or Sunrise Towers for that matter, or Piedmont Park, or Cleveland Avenue Homes. These are aging, obsolete housing models that we have inherited that we need to deal with. But we did not get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of this overnight. So we want to own the fact that we've got some concerns about some of our housing stock, and it all needs to be modernized. But needing modernization is a whole lot different than suggesting that we are failing to respond to maintenance issues or that there are catastrophic failing systems in these buildings. So the note here indicates that I categorically reject allegations of plumbing system failures, defective work order system, non-responsiveness of management or maintenance staff, and we certainly categorically reject the accusation that nothing has been done. The following slides will put a little color on that. The work order system at Crystal Towers alone enabled us to receive and close almost 2,000 work orders in calendar year 2024. The number is 1,712. I include that simply to illustrate that these are work orders that are entered by residents and tracked. So if the work order system was, quote, a disaster, we would not have been able to open and close nearly 2,000, again, entered by residents. There are several methods of entering a work order. A resident can report it to the management office. They can call the management office. They can email the management office. They can call our after-hours emergency work order line. And yes, they can input it online through either a phone or a website. But again, that is one of many options. And I will also emphasize this. The online work order system is not proprietary. It is a software system that is nearly ubiquitous across the industry. Both for-profit and public housing authorities use this software all across the country. There was a reference to a fire that occurred in January at Crystal Towers. And I just want to provide some detail on the circumstances surrounding that fire. The fire was caused when a resident just left some cooking materials unattended. And I want to be really, really clear about this. This is a wonderful resident, okay? This was a one-off thing. I'll bet all of us have left cooking materials unattended. She did not leave the apartment. She was in another room and they caught fire, okay? This was a small fire. Not only was the damage relegated to that one residence unit, but it did not even affect anything other than her kitchen. The damage was so insignificant that it did not exceed our insurance deductible, and our in-house staff was able to get her back in approximately 1 week. We have an integrated smoke detector system which worked exactly as it was designed to work. It triggered a building-wide fire alarm. It notified the Winston-Salem Fire Department, who responded promptly as they always do, quickly extinguished the fire, and everyone evacuated the building. A second resident was able to evacuate under his own power. He did live right across the hall from the individual where the fire started. He was able to evacuate under his own power and was standing outside in front of the building awaiting the all clear from the fire department when he had a medical episode. He ultimately died a few weeks later. Again, it is tragic. Heart goes out to his family, certainly, but there is no indication, absolutely none, that it had anything to do with housing authority. There was a comment that, during public comment, that we had no fire extinguishers. Here are pictures of fire extinguishers, the yellow tags reflecting current inspections. I don't know that the picture behind those, the pictures of the extinguishers in the foreground show up, but the pictures in the background are intended to indicate the location of the fire extinguishers. There are at least 3 fire extinguishers on every hall, which are routinely inspected.
Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
You want to do questions at the end or now? How about let's go germane to this issue?
Yeah, it's the
Okay, go ahead.
Why would you think that the perception of the residents and supporters believe that the second resident, going back to your previous slide, unfortunately, his demise was due to no smoke detectors and no fire extinguishers?
Yes, ma'am, I don't know. I think I would say anytime I've ever lost someone I cared about, I looked for someone to blame. I think that's just human nature. And I think, you know, this was a long-term resident. He was a friend to many of the other residents, and it's tragic when someone passes away. And I think when it happens and the circumstances are around a fire, I think that it's reasonable to suggest that maybe the housing authority could have done something to prevent it.
One more question, Mayor. So the fire department and the fire investigators, they can unequivocally document the data or information, the evidence that those items were present?
So the fire department issued a statement, I believe the day after the fire, that there were 2 injuries that were, quote, unrelated to the fire, or something to that effect. We have reviewed the death certificate, and I'm not a medical expert, but it did not appear to me at first blush that there was any indication that the fire was the direct cause of the individual's death.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
One of the other items that was noted during public comment was plumbing maintenance. We've received a draft assessment, and again, just in interest of full disclosure, that assessment was ordered long before any of the comment during either the January or February public comment period. But the draft assessment that we received back last month provided, quote, plumbing equipment and fixtures are generally in fair to good condition. We received 108 plumbing work orders this calendar year. That was through the middle of last week when I sent the report over to the city clerk. Of those 108, 94 were closed within 24 hours. The vast majority of those were closed within the exact same day they were reported. 11 of those came in on weekends or holidays and were completed within 24 business hours. So of the 14 that were not, 11 of those came in on a weekend or a holiday. And then the other 3 that are unaccounted for required parts to be ordered. None of those repairs took longer than 4 days. And just to clarify, none of those were emergent. There was no loss of water pressure. There was no inability to flush a toilet, those kinds of things. There were 0 open plumbing work orders at the time of public comment at the City Council's January meeting. There were 0 open work orders at the time of the City Council's February meeting when public comment was again made. All of the 108 that have been received this calendar year were routine. There were no pressurized failures where you had under pressure water pouring out into residential areas or common areas. There was no sewage exposure where we had raw sewage backing up into anyone's unit. Turning to general maintenance items, there are multiple layers of overview or review for maintenance of Crystal Towers. we have to pass a HUD inspection. Our most recent HUD inspection was January of 2023. HUD determines when to inspect. We do not. Oftentimes they are biannual. The frequency is determined by your score. We scored highly enough where there has not been one since January of 2023, which again was passed. We also have independent third-party inspections that we order. We passed an independent third-party inspection in April of last year. We spent $607,000 on maintenance at Crystal Towers alone in 2024. And the third layer of review, in addition to HUD and our independent inspectors, are, of course, city code enforcement. And we have had 0 code enforcement violations through the entirety of calendar year 2025. There was something that was styled as a petition that was presented to City Council following the February meeting. It appeared to be, at least the version that I received, was a typewritten list identifying residents and apartment numbers. There were 101 that were identified. 13 of those 101 sort of identified themselves, or someone identified them in the petition, but they indicated NA or no issues. But we sent staff just to confirm, and staff did confirm that 13 of those 101 had no issues. Of the remaining 88, staff inspected every unit, and of the remaining 88, only 5 issues were confirmed. 83 of the 88 who cited something on that purported petition had no existing issue. That begs the question, well, why were they on the petition? Residents reported to us citing examples of past maintenance items. So when an advocate came to their door and knocked and said, do you have any concerns, or have you ever had any concerns, they, in an attempt to be helpful and responsive, cited anything that they may have ever experienced during the entire tenancy at Crystal Towers, whether it had been satisfactorily resolved or not, or whether it had been 5 years or 15 years ago since they last had an issue. Of the 5 issues that were confirmed, none had previously been reported to us. Those issues range from a dripping faucet, the stem was replaced within 24 hours, a second dripping faucet, which was in a shower, not a kitchen faucet, and that was replaced within 24 hours, a loose toilet, which was tightened within 24 hours, an inoperable bathroom fan, which was replaced within 24 hours, and a damaged ceiling in the shower. And that took 4 days. And just to provide a little bit of context, these are plaster ceilings. So you have to go in, apply the plaster, wait for it to dry, sand it, apply another layer, and wait for it to dry. With respect to the comment that we've not done any investment, these are just select projects that we would consider improvements, not fixing what's broken, but what have we done to make the building better since 2022. Again, an illustrative list, not an exhaustive list. We've done a lobby upgrade, a laundry upgrade, a full elevator system replacement. We've installed bench seating. We've upgraded parking lot lighting. We've installed a computer lab. We've installed a security window, changed all the interior doors to be security doors. We're in the process of installing courtyard fencing, and we did GCFI replacement on the outlets. These are just some pictures to document the work that's been done. Lighting upgrade, computer lab, bench seating, new elevators, renovated community room, centralized and upgraded laundry facilities. That is obviously an in-progress picture. I want to highlight the fact that it's not Crystal Towers only, right? We've got numerous housing sites across the city, and again, these are illustrative only, not exhaustive, but my point being, we get limited federal funds to do these improvements, and every dollar we spend at one site is a dollar we can't spend at another. The needs at these other sites are just as real as the needs at Crystal Towers. So we've done Healy Towers day room renovation, Healy Towers elevator system replacement, Sunrise Towers elevator system replacement, Piedmont Park roof replacement, Piedmont Park HVAC replacement, and Townview roof replacement. And that, you know, that you say, well, gosh, I mean, what are you really doing there? Well, just the Piedmont Park and Townview roofs, those are $1 million projects. So when we start talking about having $3 million a year to invest in these buildings, $1 million doesn't go nearly as far as it used to. And so we're not doing things that are necessarily upgrades and improvements. We're trying to solve for the issue of obsolescence in the housing stock that we have inherited, systems that are long past their useful life that we're going in and replacing. This slide simply illustrates that we are trying to be leaders in this space by creating alternative housing stock. We're not sitting idly by as we watch our original housing stock age. We're doing things like acquiring vacant housing that was the Heights, the former State Employees Credit Union Commons. We're doing King Building renovation to try to be physically present in East Winston, where we serve. We're doing the Brookside View completion, the Lowy repositioning, which is creating workforce housing in the downtown core. Happy Hill phases 1 and 2 are in the process of completion and the process of pre-development. Lansing Ridge phases 1 and 2, which were an albatross around the Housing Authority's neck for years, are beautiful, affordable homeownership opportunities. Brown School Loss has been completed, and we've supported 3 affordable housing developments with bond financing. Sorry, Jamie, I think I may be stuck. Okay, thank you. This was just a quote that we try to live by. Maya Angelou, do the best you can until you know better, then when you know better, do better. That reflects 2 things. One, our new approach to the new housing model, which we're trying to build out. And then second, that we've not always done everything right at Crystal Towers, and we want to make sure that we learn from those mistakes of the past. So communication has been something that we have really emphasized. I'm really proud of our communication. We have reestablished an active resident advisory council that meets monthly with executive leadership. We have a resident advisory board that has the opportunity to present every quarter to our full board at a Housing Authority board meeting. We have community engagement staff on site. We have provided office space for the resident council to work out of at Crystal Towers. And this communication has resulted in tangible outcomes. And I want to give the residents credit for a lot of these. I mean, several of these items that I've presented were things that they brought to us. The facilities projects that we've noted, we made a change to the staffing to our security contractor at the request of residents, and we've instituted some programs that the residents have requested at some of these meetings. The VA was on site. We did the Narcan installation in partnership with the county, and the Winston-Salem Fire Department did fire safety training, among many others. About 2 years ago, I came to you guys and reported on where we were at Crystal Towers. And I think it's great that we're doing it now. Obviously, we've got some new council members who weren't here for that, but equally important, I think, is the fact that when we rolled out this phased approach at Crystal Towers the first time, none of these phases had been completed. So we're back now noting that phase 1, which was to centralize the laundry to address water intrusion into the elevator, which was contributing to the elevator problems, that's been completed. Phase 2, which was to renovate the lobby to improve security and ingress egress, that's been completed. Phase 3, which was to replace the entire elevator system, has been completed. Phase 4 is in process, soon to be completed. We've received a draft assessment, and in approximately 30 days, we expect to receive a number and a scope of work for the baseline recommendation to improve Crystal Towers. That will allow us to move into Phase 5 in partnership with the city and other funding sources and stakeholders to figure out how do we now implement the recommendation from the independent third-party architectural and engineering team. So nothing has changed, and I think we all recognize that we want this to go as quickly as possible, but I think it's very important that we work the plan that was established. We don't want to be reactionary. It's easy to sort of respond in knee-jerk fashion and just start throwing solutions at a problem. What we don't want to do is start addressing the electrical and you interrupt people's lives and you disrupt them and you temporarily displace them. You knock down a wall, you fix the electrical, and then guess what? 4 years later, you got to come do the same thing to the plumbing. And then 3 years later, you kind of go do the same thing to the kitchens and the countertops. We want to make sure that we're doing this in a way that's going to be sustainable over the long term and not simply reacting to an issue. And keeping in mind that we've got 3 other communities that need the same thing. Cleveland, Piedmont, and Sunrise are all aging public housing stock, and we need to figure out how to marshal our resources and utilize them effectively and efficiently to address all of those needs. I'll touch on one other thing regarding the assessment. HUD has previously requested what are known as green physical needs assessments. Those are simply cursory reviews. An architect or an engineer comes in and sort of does a walkthrough of all of our housing stock. It takes about a day, and they just sort of spitball what it might cost to address some of these issues. That is completely different than this assessment that we discussed roughly 2 years ago, and I'm telling you all now is almost complete. That includes architectural renderings. It includes a market-driven cost estimate and a full scope of work, as well as options, sort of what is the baseline need, and then if we can find some additional resources, what would be some add-ons that we would like to see, and then what is sort of the top tier, and what are those going to cost. That's also engaged the residents, and we've had several community charrettes and community meetings to get their input as well. I'll wrap it up, and of course, I'm happy to take questions or comments, but with sort of 3 notes here. So where are we? Okay. Where are we is that the age, the design, and the nature of federal programs make high-rise public housing everywhere a challenge, both to operate and to live in. And it's absolutely fair to be frustrated about that. You all, our staff, our board, and certainly the residents who are living there. But we need to be honest about the issues in order to solve them. The advocacy needs to lie in a couple of places, and certainly the local advocacy is great. We've seen progress come from the local advocacy, but we need federal advocacy as well. This is a national issue. This is not a problem that the Winston-Salem Housing Authority can solve. It's not a problem that the Winston-Salem City Council can solve. It is a national issue that we need to be addressing. And then secondly, we've got to invest in the people. The advocacy needs to be around case management services, and wraparound, because as my third bullet there notes, investment in this building is useless if we don't invest in the people living in the building. We can turn that building into the proverbial Taj Mahal tomorrow, but if we don't invest in the behavioral health issues, the mental health issues, the emotional health issues, the substance abuse issues, then the building's going to look more or less the same in a very short period of time. So we've got to invest collectively in the people. And Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, we're here as partners in this, and we appreciate your partnership, and we appreciate the partnership of the residents. I think the vast majority of the residents in that building understand the work that's going in, and they understand the plan as it's been articulated, but I don't blame them at all for being frustrated. These things take time, and we just need to continue to stick with the process and make sure that we're going about it in a logical, well-thought-out, well-communicated manner. And I'm certainly happy to receive questions or comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. You may have said this, but I perhaps missed it. Phases 1, 2, and 3, what's the approximate capital investment that you all have made in that?
Just over $2 million.
Million?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's been significant. Any questions, Ms. Clark?
Try to ask these quickly. What is the response from HUD when you say, I see a fundamental issue here in that between the rent you get.
Your microphone.
Between the rents you get and the subsidy from HUD, that is not enough to maintain the building.
Yes, sir.
What is HUD's response to that?
HUD has, so thank you for that question, Councilmember Clark. So yes, to your point, HUD calculates what it should cost to operate the building, and then they deduct what they expect us to collect in rents, and they calculate a subsidy that they should provide. They then prorate that subsidy every year. So HUD has itself a formula to determine your break-even point, and then they, by admission, give you a prorated amount of that money. So Crystal Towers loses money even with the subsidy every year, which means that other communities that are able to positively cash flow, we have to pull money from those communities into support the communities that lose money, such as Crystal Towers. HUD's response is to push something called RAD, which is essentially a conversion model that allows public housing authorities to work with private developers and to borrow money against future subsidy streams. We ran those numbers, and at Crystal Towers, we'd be able to borrow about $5 million under the RAD conversion program. So it is a tool. It is just an imperfect tool, and you would have to be comfortable that you would need to service the debt that RAD would allow you to use to do the renovations.
Second question and last question. A lot is happening in Washington, and some of us just got back. Have you seen any reduction in the manpower that you work with at HUD, and any indication that the money coming from HUD in the future is going to be less than you're getting now?
So far, the answer to both of those questions is no. I'm sure, Councilmember Clark, I've read the same things you've read, but the folks in D.C. that we deal with at HUD are all still there. The folks at the Greensboro office that we deal with at HUD are all still there, and so far, there's been no indication of any funding reductions to this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Andrew Bowen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. So Healy Towers is located in the Southwest Ward, which I am the council member for. And about a month and a half ago, Mr. Ellis gave me a nice tour of the building. I appreciate that. And then about a month ago, I was part of their council meeting and was appreciative, one, that I was invited, and then two, that you had 3 staff members there. I don't know if they're always there, but I appreciated them being there where I could kind of field some of the questions to them. So I appreciate them being there. My question is the kind of the one thing that I've been made aware of, and that the concern for Healy Towers is around the bed bugs. What can be done there? What is being done there? What's a way we can prevent that from happening? I know that a lot of that is around your personal style and personal living, but what on your end and our end can be done to help that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and thank you for coming out and seeing Healy Towers, and thanks for those comments about our staff. Yeah, bed bugs is an issue. It's not just an issue for us, it's an issue for hotels, and it's an issue also across the country. We've engaged third-party pest control contractors to do proactive inspection as well as to treat. The main problem we have, Councilmember, in response to your question, is reporting. There's a stigma around bed bug infestations. So unfortunately, sometimes they are really, really bad and start sort of creeping into adjacent apartments before we know about them. So we've really done a lot to try to educate residents to say this is not something over which you will be evicted. This is not something for which you will be held responsible. This is just something we need to know about so that we can get in quickly and treat it so that it doesn't spread. I wish I had a solution. I mean, we've been really happy with our pest control operators. The treatments are effective when we can get in there and do them. It's really just a matter of educating residents and communicating so that they will alert us as soon as they think they have a problem, because as we know, all it takes is a trip to the library or a ride on the bus, and that's certainly in no way intended to be pejorative of either the library or the bus system. It's just the reality that almost every public space has bed bugs present, and trying to get ahead of them can be a real challenge. And forgive me, I'm going on too long, but I will say we have heat treated entire buildings before, which is a massive undertaking, and less than 3 months later, you've got almost the exact same infestation rate. Yes, sir.
System, but could you talk about if there are other ways, like if you don't have internet or internet on your phone or something like that? And then could you also describe what it looks like once a work order has been completed by staff, maintenance staff, how folks know, how the resident knows, how anyone else that wants to fact check could see that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you for that. And let me say this, forgive me if I misspoke. We didn't have 0 work orders. There were 0 that were open. So in other words, if there was any issue, it had been closed out or we had received no reports at the time of either meeting. So yes, so the work order system does allow the online reporting, as you mentioned, through Rent Cafe. You can also physically come to the management office, the on-site management office, and make an in-person report. You can email the management office. You can call the management office. We also have an after-hours work order line, so they can be input a variety of different ways. We always encourage residents to request a work order number. To your point about tracking, we can typically find it if somebody comes in and says, you know, Sue Smith, we can search by last name, but again, sometimes it becomes well, I did tell you, well, no, you didn't. We always encourage residents to be sure to ask for a work order number so that if there does become an issue at the site level and it gets escalated, we can look into it and say, no, I do see that work order number in the system, and in fact, you're correct, it never got closed out. We, to your point about how is it sort of tracked, so weekly, our maintenance supervisor, which is to say Chris and his team, they will run a report and they will look for open work orders, and the main thing we're tracking is aged work orders. So if we see one that's older than 48 hours, we will flag that, call, follow up. Sometimes it's obviously just a data entry error. Sometimes there are work orders that do require that they be open for several days. You're waiting on a part, or it's something that requires drying time, but we monitor that proactively every single week. That's part of our standard operating procedure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Cheshire. Very well done, and a lot of good information there.
Thank you all.
We look forward to hearing back from you after the complete assessment is done. All right, item G2.
Item G2, consideration of items related to use of choice neighborhood funds for commercial facade improvement grant program by Housing Authority of Winston-Salem and Housing and Urban Development.
Mr. Hunter.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. Samuel Hunter, Assistant Director of Neighborhood Services. This is the third installment of the Choice Neighborhood Critical Community Improvements Grant. When we got this grant from HUD back in 2020, out of the $30 million, $4 million were set aside for critical community improvements. You'll often hear them referred to as CCIs. The first CCI that we implemented was a residential facade improvement program that is undergoing to date. We had $875,000 of that. Roughly, we have $300,000 that have been earmarked for residents in the East and Northeast Ward in the CNI target area. So once those funds are exhausted, that will be the end of that. The second installment was for the public art funds. That is currently being administered with the Planning Department and Neighborhood Services. We have partnered together to administer that. They have identified some sites to install some public art and some other infrastructure improvements in the community as well. This third installment in front of you all today is to receive the funding from HUD to implement the program here in our department in partnership with Business Inclusion and Advancement. This is a commercial facade improvement. This will be a grant program, a little different than some of the programs that we've previously implemented that were loans. This one will be 100% a grant. It will not exceed more than $40,000 for the improvements of the exterior of commercial businesses in the CNI target area. One of the main components of eligibility is to be located in the CNI target area, be current on all your taxes, make sure you have your registered business in the CNI footprint, and also make sure that you have no outstanding code violations on your property as well. As I mentioned, everything for this program is exterior only, so siding, roofing, doors, windows, landscaping, and fencing are eligible in this. We're looking at rolling this out in May as an application cycle with all of our other application cycles for the lending division and neighborhood services as well. Annually, we host an open house series. Last year, we had a successful turnout for those open house series, and we are scheduling those meetings to be held in May as well. We will be informing the community about everything that we do in neighborhood services in addition to this program that will be administered this calendar year. Once the funds for this program is exhausted, this will be a one-time tranche. We will have some successful measurements to provide with you after all the programs are implemented, just so you all know where we stand, how the funds were expended, and how the community received those funds as well. I stand ready for any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mr. Hunter, could you send council the footprint of the CNI area? It wasn't in the attachment. I looked, I clicked on some links, but it wasn't there. Would appreciate that much.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Scipio.
Businesses are a lot different than homeowners. They may not be able to come to our community meetings. Are we going to be able to contact them directly to let them know this program is ongoing, at least those in the target area, so that they can make that decision whether they want to participate or not?
Yes, ma'am. We will contact them directly. We will work with your community assistance liaisons to get the word out. We will also host a virtual meeting for those business owners that may not be able to attend the after-hours meeting as well.
I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
With the residence facade, we did a couple of rounds. We had a group that went first. They were selected. Is there a selection process the same way for businesses? And will some have to wait for the second round?
That is correct. So it will be, there is some evaluation criteria in there. Obviously, they have to meet all the eligibility criteria, but we also want to make sure that we're making a significant impact to the community. So we'll evaluate their scope of work and what they're proposing as well. As far as the phased approach, it'll determine on how the budget is depleted over the first cycle. So, fingers crossed, we can get in the first round, everyone comes in and we can exhaust all those funds. In the event we don't, we will have a second round of funding with the remaining balance of those funds.
And one more question, Mr. Mayor. Businesses, if a person is leasing a space, can they apply for the loan, or does it have to be the property owner?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So people that are leasing the spaces are eligible to apply, and typically we anticipate that's who will be applying for these. They do need to have the property owner sign the documents as well as the guarantee or the grantor, but they are eligible to apply for this. One stipulation to that is that they do need to have at least a one-year operating lease in place as well, just to protect our investment, even though it's a grant.
Thank you.
Other questions? Motion, Mayor Pro Tem.
I move for approval of item G2.
Second by Councilwoman Clark. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
We got a vote?
We got to vote.
Well, no, we're voting on, we're voting on
There it goes.
Councilmember Joyner. You're good. Okay. We've got a motion that's unanimous. Thank you. Item G3.
Item G3, update on affordable housing development process, proposal review.
Ms.
Good
McMahon.
afternoon, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, members of City Council, Chantel McClam, Neighborhood Services Director, and I am here today to give you an update on our affordable housing development process. This is for information only. Let's see, am I ready? So today we're going to basically go over an overview of Cycle 1, do a refresher as it relates to the evaluation process and the scoring matrix, review each proposal that we received, and then basically discuss the comments and the recommendation of the Affordable Housing Evaluation Team and the Affordable Housing Coalition. Then hopefully talk through some next steps, get some recommendations from this committee on what we need to bring forward next month for action. And then, of course, answer whatever questions you all may have. So before I get started, I would be remiss if I did not give thanks to the people that made sure that this process and this Cycle 1 was successful, starting with the Neighborhood Services and Housing Development staff, my Assistant Director, Samuel Hunter, and John Kuros, who is the Construction Management Project Supervisor in Housing Development. They have been in this process with me since it started, and I cannot say thank you enough. The Affordable Housing Development Evaluation Team, we went to all of these departments to get some subject matter experts, and each of them said yes to me without even knowing what type of undertaking this would be to evaluate. Bill Brewer from our utilities, Matthew Burchak from Planning and Development Services, Kelly Garvin from Transportation, Samuel, of course, Dr. Shailene Miller from Sustainability, and Jakira Westbrook from Business Inclusion and Advancement. And of course, our Affordable Housing Coalition, the committee of citizens who have come together and agreed to evaluate our proposals and give us feedback. Chair Durham Montgomery, Joseph Crocker, Richard Daniels, John Louder, Paula McCoy, David Myers, Raymond O'Farrell, Dixon Pitt, Noel Sibbett, Sylvia Squire, and Francis Sullivan. Thank you all so very much for all of the hard work that you put into this process. So Cycle 1, of course you all know that the cycle opened up December the 10th and it closed January 24th at 3 p.m. We advertised via direct email to our ever-growing developer base, and we also advertised via the newspaper, billboard, and we did something a little bit different by doing an advertisement on a transit bus, which was it was a nice advertisement that I hope a lot of people got to see. We received a total of 50 proposals from 24 developers. Total responsive proposals out of that 50 was 26 from 8 developers. We received 4 LIHTC proposals from 4 developers, and we had 26 city-owned parcels requested from 4 different developers, and 5 of those parcels were actually pursued by multiple developers. So I'm sure this is a question everybody is wondering. So what would deem me non-responsive? So if we received, as I said, the proposal, the application period closed January 24th at 3 p.m. If we received your proposal at 3:01, it was deemed non-responsive. And so if you submitted a proposal beyond the deadline date or beyond the deadline time, that would deem you non-responsive. If we received your proposal in a format, in an unapproved format, meaning anything outside of the neighborly software, it would be deemed non-responsive. So that means if you emailed us, if you mailed us, if you dropped it off at the office, it would have been deemed non-responsive. If your application was incomplete, meaning missing required forms, those forms that are necessary for us to properly evaluate your proposal utilizing the scoring matrix that I'll show you in a couple of slides. So required forms as your pro forma, the elevation, and of course, that pre-work that we communicated regarding meeting with the planning department to ensure that what you're proposing actually is possible on the parcel or the land that you're proposing to construct on. If you submitted conflicting information in your application, meaning your application stated possibly that you're going to construct 72 units, but your accompanied documents basically is breaking down a 52-unit construction, or the financial report didn't match what you're stating you're constructing. So if there's conflicting information in your application versus your accompanying documents, you would have been deemed non-responsive. So let's review the evaluation process. So that preliminary review of responsiveness was internal. So that took place with the neighborhood services and housing development staff. And this is not a process that we took lightly. This process took us about 2.5 days because some of these proposals had as many as 200 pages. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at every page that was submitted to us. We knew this was the first cycle. It was important for us to try to get it right. And so it took us some time, but we went through each page and to make sure whether or not your proposal was responsive or not. After that, then we brought those documents to our evaluation team that then looked at each proposal to put that quantitative scoring on it. And so we'll review utilizing the criteria that's shown there. After which, we sent the proposals to the Affordable Housing Coalition. They did not see any quantitative scoring. We wanted to make sure that these two teams looked at the proposals on their own merit to ensure that when we brought the information back together, to make sure that we were on the same page, that there were no outliers. And then, of course, City Council. Here we are bringing the information to City Council to review and give us recommendations on how we should move forward. So as it relates to the evaluation criteria, as you can see there, the development quality had a 35 percentage points, financial feasibility 30, development and management team 25, MWBE participation 10 points, and supportive services would be an additional 10 points that you could receive out of the scoring. Now, this is the spreadsheet that we've got all of our numbers and metrics behind, but just wanted to make sure that as it relates to development quality, it's the biggest percentage point, so I just wanted to kind of emphasize what we were looking at in that development quality score. So it included a location score. That location score is going to determine your proximity or the proposed project's proximity to schools, hospitals, emergency services, but we put a higher rating on transportation. So we wanted to make sure that as it relates to that location score, how close are you to transportation? So there was a maximum of 100 points that could be received here. The location score, the AMI score. The location score is worth 50 points. The AMI score is worth a total of 30 points. Now, for the AMI score, it depends on how many units you are setting aside for those AMI categories. So the lower the AMI categories, the more units that you set aside, the higher score that you can get in this category. And so there's a maximum of 35 points in this category. And then there is the amenity score. The amenity score, we require when it comes to multifamily, we require that the multifamily actually select 5 amenities. And we have a category that we put in our manual. And so they have to select at least 3 from priority 1 and at least 2 from priority 2. However, the more you select from that priority 1 category, the higher your amenity score can be. Leverage resources and financial feasibility are exactly what they are. It means the request of gap financing from us, what is the ratio of that request as it relates to the total development cost. The lower your financial, the lower your percentage, the higher your score. Development and management team, we are looking at your years of demonstrated experience in this field, developing and completing comparable projects. MWBE, you could either be certified MWBE to receive these points, or you could fill out a form stating that you would make a good effort to utilize MWBE contractors. And then, of course, supportive services, you had to provide us with a plan to provide supportive services. So let's talk through the proposal and developer proposals. In our LIHTC category, we received 4, as stated before, 1 from Greenway Residential Development, LLC, Sage Point Apartments, Workforce Solutions, McLean Crossing, Popular Development Group, Tulip Commons at Old Vineyard, and Central Developers, LLC, Windsor Chase. For our single-family lots, we had C2 Contractors, LLC, that requested 7 lots, city-owned lots for 7 single-family homes for home ownership. Green Tech Properties requested 7 lots for single-family homes, but for rental. Denton Construction Services requested 10 single-family lots for single-family studio homes for rent. And then Schweitzer Homes, LLC, requested 7 lots for 7 single-family homes for home ownership. So here's a map of where the projects are located. As you can see, we've got a LIHTC project proposal in the southwest. We have 2 in the south, and we have 1 in the north. And then as it relates to our single-family homes, both for home ownership and for rental, we've got proposals in the north, northeast, east, and southeast. So the projects we placed in order of their scoring, in order of our recommendations. So the first you see on the screen is Sage Point Apartments. It is located at 2065 Bethabara Road in the North Ward. This is a 2 3-story garden-style buildings with a clubhouse, computer center, exercise room, playground, and on-site laundry facilities. It provides much-needed housing for families. It includes 60 units for the families with incomes at or below 80%. This multifamily unit also includes balconies and washer-dryer connections. Their request from the city is $1.6 million, and the total development cost is $16.1 million. As you can see there, their location score was 46 out of 50, their AMI score was 25 out of 30, and their amenity score was 14 out of 15. As you can see, they tied for number one with with evaluation quantitative score of 500 points. And that's their elevation, a copy of their elevation. Next project, Windsor Chase. Windsor Chase is one 4-story garden-style building with elevators, community room, computer room, fitness room, on-site laundry facility, and gazebo. Units will have balconies with patios, provides much-needed housing for seniors. It includes 72 units at or below 80% AMI, with 44% of the units set aside at 30% AMI, and 8 of the units will be designated for seniors with special needs. The developer did submit a supportive services plan, which included on-site health seminars, self-care programs, and legal and financial planning for seniors. They tied here with a quantitative score of 500 points, their location score of 44 out of 50, AMI score of 24 out of 30, and of course their amenity score, they received the 10 extra points for the supportive services. So 25 points. Next project, Tulip Commons at Old Vineyard, which is located at 4124 Old Vineyard Road in the Southwest Ward. This is Phase 2 at the Old Vineyard site, and this is one 4-story garden-style building with elevators, community room, computer room, fitness room, on-site laundry, and gazebo. Provides much-needed housing for seniors and includes 60 units with incomes of 80% or below AMI. Tulip Commons, as I said, this is a Phase 2. We did support Phase 1 last year as they received a LIHTC award. They came in number 3 with 462.5 points. They have a location score of a 50 out of 50, an AMI score of 22 out of 30, and an amenity score of 15 out of 15. Next project, McLean Crossing, which is located at 3613 Stafford Place Boulevard in the South Ward. It involves 3-story garden-style buildings with clubhouse, computer center, playground, covered picnic areas with tables and grills, outside sitting areas with benches. The facility will also have a screened-in dumpster and recycling area. Provides much-needed housing for families and includes 72 units with incomes at or below 80% AMI. Moving on to our single-family projects, which are also in order of scoring. First with Schweitzer Homes, LLC. They requested 7 city-owned lots for single-family homes for ownership. These are 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, 2-story single-family homes, with each being approximately 1,437 square feet with garages and energy-efficient appliances. They ranked number 1 with evaluation score of 380 points, location score of 47, AMI score of 10 out of 30, and elevation score, meaning what we see in their elevation score of 14 out of 15. And as it relates to the AMI score for these single family, most of them are going to be geared at a 80% AMI due to their selling price. And so the suggested sales price for these homes would be $240,000. Ranking number 2, C2 Contractors LLC. They also requested 7 city-owned lots in the East Ward. These are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, ranch-style single-family homes, approximately 1,152 square feet, with covered porches, fireplaces, and energy-efficient appliances. Their sales price is going to be $238,338. Denton Construction Services requested 10 city-owned lots. This is a unique, innovative type of proposal. They are 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 400 square feet, energy-efficient studio rental mini homes with covered porches, tankless water heaters, and they are also customizable on the exterior to fit the community. Green Tech Properties, LLC, they requested 7 city-owned lots for rental. They want to construct 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single-family rental homes at approximately 1,209 square feet. They ranked number 3 at a score with 330, location score 49, AMI score of 10, elevation score of 70. Let me go back because I did not state what Denton Construction ranked. They ranked number 4 with a score of 300, and I wanted to explain why they ranked number 4 at the score of 300. Each of these studio homes only require $35,000 each to be built. $35,000 is the maximum request that we allow for single-family homes. So they are essentially requesting all of the funding from the city to build these. But these are all loans. These are not grants. So these are all loans, and they would come due once the studio homes are built. And so as it relates to financial feasibility, of course, they received 0 points, and that's why they ranked number 4 in this category. Okay, so as it relates to the Affordable Housing Evaluation Team comments and recommendation, the evaluation team is recommending that we conditionally award all 4 of the LIHTC projects. So what does that mean? As you can see there, the LIHTC projects total $6.465 in gap financing. This round, we did allocate $4 million. So if all of the LIHTC projects were to win an award, which would be unheard of, a city our size does not typically get awarded 4 LIHTC projects. We are hopeful for 2. However, if we do not conditionally award all 4, then if we conditionally award 2, then that means 2 of them won't apply. They won't apply because without the municipal support, their application wouldn't go anywhere. So if we say we conditionally award all 4, we get 2, then the city does not lose anything. If we just select 2 and our 2 are not selected for low-income housing tax credits, then we get nothing. If they award us 4, then that's sending a signal to the city that we are doing something right as it relates to affordable housing. As it relates to award of the city-owned parcels, we are, as I stated earlier, there were 5 city-owned lots that were contested by several contractors. And so in this case, where we had Schweitzer and C2 contractors competing for 2 of those lots, we are recommending that we award all 7 of the requested lots to Schweitzer, as they have offered to purchase our lots for $10,000 each. And they are requesting gap financing of $195,000 along with those lots. So we are recommending that we award those 7 requested parcels. We are recommending that C2 contractors receive 5 of the requested 7 parcels that they asked for and gap financing of $175,000. And then we are recommending that Denton is awarded all 10 parcels requested along with the $350,000 gap financing requested. As it relates to the Green Tech proposal, We are recommending that that proposal is declined, and we recommend that the developer resubmits when we open the cycle back up in June with an improved proposed elevation and home design. The total of the city-owned lots and gap financing would be $722,000 if our recommendations are accepted, and so the additional $280,000 would just move forward to the next cycle. Here are the comments from the Affordable Housing Coalition. I'm not going to read them all to you, but they are definitely in line with what the evaluation team communicated. They believe in the 4 LIHTC projects, and they feel that any of those projects, if brought to Winston-Salem, would be a great asset to the city. And they didn't see that there would be any financial issues or see that there would be any issues with awarding these developers conditionally for their projects. As it relates to the single-family homes, they were also in alignment with the evaluation team. They agreed as well as it relates to green tech. Based on the elevations, you can see here, based on the elevation provided, the homes do not fit with the aesthetic of the surrounding community they are proposing to develop in. So they were in line with what the evaluation team stated as well. So next steps. We are looking to get some guidance from you all on what to bring back. We can give you our recommendations and our comments, but we would like to get some guidance from this committee on what we should bring back for award. We will then prepare those conditional recommendations for action to bring back to the Community Development Housing General Government Committee on April 14th. Hopefully for approval by City Council by May 5th, and to be able to provide those developer conditional award notifications by May the 6th. The LIHTC applications are due to North Carolina Housing Finance by May the 9th, and so that's why the schedule is a bit tight. And typically we'll find out what projects will receive tax credit awards in August.
Thank you, Ms. Chantel. That's great. I personally agree with your strategy on the LIHTC. If we send 4 good proposals down to the housing finance agencies, it certainly increases our chance to get an award or 2 awards. Might be great. So I think your strategy makes a lot of sense to me anyway. Councilmember, questions, comments? Councilmember Scipio?
Got a couple questions. I'm not familiar with the Denton organization, and I'm just concerned that we would be funding the entire project without knowing who they are. What is their reputation? And have they done this somewhere else? And can we see the actual buildings that they have done? I just have a concern with putting tiny houses in nicer developed neighborhoods. And so part of it, what I want to see is those lots, since it's 10, if they're all scattered or if they're all together. I just need more information on that. So if we could give us some information on that particular developer and if they're local or not.
Yes, Councilman Recipio, we can bring that information back. They have not done any work in North Carolina, but they have worked, this model has worked in Texas. They've also done some things on military bases. This is something, they have worked in other areas as it relates to modular homes. This is something that they would like to bring to Winston-Salem, but we do plan on, some of the developers came this evening, but we told them that when we come to the general government, community development meeting, that they would have an opportunity to come and give remarks, let them know, let you all know what their history is, what their experience is, and also show you some of their work.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I'm excited. It's been a long road, like you said, but we can finally see some of the progress. When I was up on the Hill this past week sitting in their housing session, and it was packed. And I was explaining to some of the folks at my table some of the things that we had done. Again, the facilitators and presenters basically looked like they stole our cheat sheet. They were talking about the things that other cities will need to do. And some of the things they mentioned was a plan. They talked about that because we're at a time that housing development, community engagement, asset building, all of it, you have to have a way to move forward of how you're going to get collaboration is key. How you're going to get all of these different other groups that maybe you've never collaborated with to come on board to help build the much-needed housing that your community needs. I want to thank you, the staff, the department, everybody that's participated in this road for the past, I don't know how many years. Anyway, I am excited again. I'd like to see the locations. You provided the locations of the multifamilies, which, you know, looking at the streets, the ones of us that's born and raised here, we know where that is. I'd like to see the location that you guys can get to us of the location of these single lots in these different communities, as Councilmember Scipio said, as to where they're going to be. I'm excited to see the variety, that we are now moving out of that locked mode of we're either going to do this or we're going to do nothing. We know that housing comes in many shapes. They talked about that. You got to be open-minded, that everybody doesn't necessarily want what you want. You got to build according to your citizens and your customers. So again, I'm looking forward to the conversations with the developers, learning more about them. And again, I'm excited.
Thank you, Mr. McClam. Councilmember Taylor, excuse me, go ahead.
Just a quick question, Mr. McClam. Thank you for the presentation. Ideally, as everybody knows, we'd like to get all 4 LIHTC projects. In the event that we don't, that 3.2 odd million, does that roll over to the June cycle? If not, what happens to it?
Yeah, it does. If we only get one project, the remaining money will roll forward.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. We're excited, as Mayor Pro Tem said, and I think this shows that the procedure we came up with and approved is working. So.
And I just did want to note that I did include an exhibit with the package that shows the actual address of all of the parcels for each one, because we scored each parcel. We scored, I think it's Exhibit B. We scored each parcel by itself, but then we took an average of the proposals for each developer. So you should have some information as it relates to each address, but I will make sure that it is clearly defined when it's brought back to the April meeting.
Good. Thank you very much. All right, item G4, please.
Item G4, report on strategic energy plan.
Dr. Miller.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. This is a strategic energy plan, which is to be a roadmap to guide our carbon footprint reduction and ensure a healthier community for the future. It's been crafted over the last year through meetings with management, utilities, fleet, and PFM. So some of the items we've already taken steps to move towards, and some are ones to move forward. I've been asked to shorten this, so I will leave it for many of it for the questions at the end. So this is all following on your resolution from 2020 to move towards clean and renewable energy. And that, of course, means reduction and clean and renewable energy as well to get there. So I do want to point out that this is an update to where are we in greenhouse gases. It's still mostly in electricity and then fuel. What you'll see is, as a city, since 2008, when we began looking at greenhouse gases, we have not moved very much, and hopefully by defining this, we'll be able to move forward. The orange line that you see is Duke's Energy, and that comes from reduction and taking off coal. We have started moving forward with our renewable energy. What you see there on the green is what is been saved only since when we put the renewable energy on the Bass building in May. We also get renewable get through the biogas generator at the wastewater treatment plant. Same in fuel, we have had very little change since we began tracking it. But we do see that as we've moved forward this year and last year, that we've started to purchase those EV vehicles and hybrids, which do really bring down the fuel emissions and the fuel use. We defined 4 key strategies: maximizing energy efficiency, so that's making sure we're doing things right and it's the most cost efficient as well; expanding renewable energy; increasing towards electrification and where we cannot, hybrid and alternative technologies; and continuing with partnerships. In maximizing fuel efficiency, we still have a lot of lighting projects that need to be done. Moving to LED lights will help move it as well. We also have not been very good at operating our buildings and buying energy efficient equipment. So making sure what we do in our buildings is energy efficient is very important. And future building and purchasing. In terms of renewable energy generation, big one is for solar on most of our buildings. We cannot get to 50% on our buildings with the standards. Not all of them can have it. Not all of them can create that much. Other facilities through utilities are possible. And one thing you will note here is that in the plan, it does not talk about renewable energy credits as a possibility. Other cities are doing this. Durham, Charlotte. However, discussion through our staff has said that we would rather that money, which could be up to $100,000 a year and growing as more people want credits, to just buy your energy as renewable to meet your goals, is not the same as investing in local infrastructure that is going to help us meet these goals. Continuing with fuel, we are prioritizing light-duty vehicles. These are the ones that we've started to buy, ones that are more cost-efficient and easier to roll out. Some of the heavy duties, for example, a refuse truck is still 2 times as expensive and not operating as efficiently. We will continue to reevaluate that going forward and continue to use hybrids when possible. And continuing to look into other things that we need. For example, we know that it's going to be tough finding these grants going forward, and working with the community is going to be important. And there's not for some of these projects that we need. LED is not being funded anymore through grants usually because they're wanting the newer technologies. So we know that this is a partnership, and I would also like to acknowledge that I have personnel, Bill Brewer from Utilities, Lindsay Smith here for Energy, and Angus Thomas for Fleet for any questions.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Miller? Councilmember Clark.
We use a lot of electricity. I think the Utilities Department uses the most because they pump water and sewer everywhere. We buy our electricity for the most part from Duke Energy. It seems like to me the key to our success is getting clean electricity from Duke. And we only have so much control over that. There was an article in the paper, matter of fact, it was on the front page of the Journal probably last week about their proposed nuclear reactors up at Blues Creek.
Yep.
But my point of this is we are somewhat dependent on Duke to give us clean electricity to really make a significant impact.
Correct.
So I think all we can be their cheerleader when the time comes. I suspect building a nuclear power plant is 20 miles from downtown Winston might be controversial. We'll see. But I do think we can assist Duke there in getting, I guess, educating the public on it.
Well, and that's one of the important things about reducing our energy use, because with the growth happening in North Carolina, even as they bring on more renewable energy sources, they're still having to keep some of the old ones to meet the demand that's coming in. So overall, reduction in energy is still an important concept to keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Councilmember Andre Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this presentation, Dr. Miller. I'm a big fan of this and hope to support as much as I can. I have a sort of a silly question. I was really excited to see the EV charging ports in the parking lot today, and I do drive an electric hybrid vehicle, but there's a sign there that says for city vehicles only. Am I allowed to park there and charge while I'm here?
Yes, we've created them for city fleet because right now it's expensive to put in charging. And because we have so many locations and so many vehicles that need to be charged, it's a very complicated matter. Unlike a business which is parking everything at one spot, every place we have it, we have to park. We have over 30 vehicles parked here in the garage, and as we transition them, we need to have spots to do it. We've worked with 2 sets of fellows and interns over the past year, working with Wake Forest as well, to create a plan that will get us enough charging for those as we bring them online.
So can he park there?
But can I park there? If there's a spot available, am I allowed to park there?
You got to pay.
I got to pay? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. It's very helpful. It's hard to start moving that needle, but I know Councilman Clark brought us a big project a couple of years ago where we were switching out all of our traffic signals and I mean, overhead streetlights. So.
Yeah, you might comment where we are on that.
Yes, we are starting with, we're working forward with Duke on a certain number of streets right now as we continue to work with the contract to change them out over the next 2.5 years. It will represent about an 8% reduction in our overall greenhouse gas, so it definitely will move the needle.
Move the needle there. Good. Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you.
All right, council members, let's see if we can get item G5 done before we break for getting ready for the council member.
I got a meeting at 6. So
I know you do. It's a long drive too, right?
Yeah.
Item G5, please.
Item G5, consideration of items related to funding to Family Services, Inc. for a non-congregate emergency shelter.
Before we go forward, I would ask, we need a motion to excuse Councilmember Scipio from participating in this item here.
I move that we excuse Councilmember Scipio from voting on and participating in discussion regarding agenda item G5.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hall. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Councilmember, you are excused. That's because she's a member of the board, I think, of Family Services. So, please, Ms. Floyd, if you would go forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and City Council. The item you have before you is for Family Services to receive $1.5 million in home ARP funds for the creation of a non-congregate shelter. The city received $4.8 million in home ARP funds. These funds are used to, the allocation can be used for non-congregate shelter, which is a shelter that allows its own private space for the individuals that are residing there. So it's separate from basically the opposite of a dormitory shelter. Rental housing, so to acquire, construct, and rehab rental housing for occupancy by individuals and families who meet the qualifying population. Senate-based rental assistance, which provides rental assistance, security deposit, and utility deposits. Supportive services such as legal services, life skills, job training, and case management services, and operating assistance and nonprofit capacity building. And that's the expenses of organizations that carry out the activities associated with the home ARP funds. So just our administrative salaries. The qualifying population for these home ARP funds are mainly the individuals experiencing homelessness. So individuals that are either residing in an emergency shelter on the streets or who may lose their housing within 14 days. It also has a space homeless under other federal statutes. In order to fall under that category, you receive a special request from HUD. So that category isn't used as much. The second qualifying population would be at risk of homelessness, so someone who has an income below 30% and who lacks the sufficient resources to prevent their immediate homelessness, and they must also meet one of the following conditions that are listed up here, and then also unaccompanied children and youth and families with children and youth. That falls under the McKinley-Vento, so usually something like couch surfing. And then the third qualifying The third qualifying population is when there's a threat of imminent harm, so DV. This is also the population that Family Services assists with domestic violence. And then that fourth population, once you go through the first three, is individuals who has an income below 30%. So that level of income where it would be hard to locate housing that is sufficient in order for them to pay housing costs that would cause homelessness. So the need with Family Services, they provide emergency shelter and services to victims of domestic violence. Their current shelter building was built in 1929, and it opened as an emergency shelter in 1988. It can normally serve up to 36 people in a dorm-style rooms with shared hall bathrooms and one shared kitchen. It has seen an unprecedented increase in requests for shelter recently, and the shelter currently operates at capacity. And it also has ongoing maintenance issues involving water damage. So over time, Family Service has seen the needs of domestic violence change, including more men arriving in the shelter as well as individuals with higher age male children. So the ask is for $1.5 million. The total project cost is $10.8 million. They plan to demolish its existing shelter, and they'll construct a new 30,000 square foot shelter that would double the current capacity, and it will serve guests in immediate crisis for up to 90 days. It'll also contain units where guests can remain up to 6 months. That is more of a bridge housing model, so where they will be able to provide intensive case management services that are needed for a long period of time. The architectural design will be trauma-informed, with the goal of creating physical spaces that promote safety, well-being, and healing. So there are reporting requirements. So non-congregate shelter is an eligible use of our HomeArt funds, and the domestic violence population is also eligible. These shelter services will continue to work collaboratively with the COC, as they have already done, and the new shelter will be required to comply with HomeArt restricted use period for 15 years from the project completion. They have presented a strong relocation plan and they plan to continue to serve households during the construction transition. Family Services is here to give more information about their relocation plan if needed. And then their program participants under the HomeArt will not be charged any occupancy fees to occupy this non-congregate shelter. And then after that use period, if Family Service chooses to do so, those units can be converted into permanent housing under our COC program or another permanent affordable housing program. And then here you have a picture of what the plan is for the new family shelter. Any questions?
Any questions? Councilman Clark.
And this may be directed to the folks from, it's roughly $10 million you're getting, this is $1.5 million request. How much of the balance have you raised?
We are currently in a community capital campaign. The goal is $10.8 million, and we've raised over 50% of that amount, and we have not been fundraising even a year yet, so there's tremendous community support.
So you're working on that side?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Mayor Pro Tem, take a motion, please.
Since you'll be moving hopefully somewhere soon, great. Again, the clients that you serve, they need this. We saw what happened during COVID, that we began to see mental illness, domestic violence, homicides, suicide, everything go up. So we thank you for your service of being here in the city for many, many years. And with that, Mayor, members of the council, I move for approval of item G5.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Andre Bowen. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is unanimous with Councilmember Scipio being excused from voting. Councilmembers, I know we've got another meeting right there. Mr. Pate, is items 6 and 7 crucial, or can we?
We can take that up at a later date if that's what the council desires.
Or I could say this. Does anyone have a problem having 6 and 7 put on our agenda? Any issues with that? You want to, or do you want to discuss?
For the full council?
Yeah, for full council.
Can we put it on the agenda at the 6 o'clock meeting?
Not this one, no.
This one, next.
The next time.
Next time, that's fine.
I'm good with that.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, we'll move forward that. All right, is there a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole?
I move for approval.
There's a second. Second by Councilmember Hall. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone knows? We're adjourned. See you in 25 minutes.